Have you ever wondered why smart people do stupid things? It's a question that has puzzled many of us for ages. You'd think that those with a high IQ would be immune to making irrational decisions, right? But, as history has shown us, that's far from the truth. Take Isaac Newton, for instance, one of the greatest minds in history, who once stuck a needle in his eye just to see what would happen. Or consider the legendary chess player Bobby Fischer, whose life was a series of bizarre, irrational decisions, despite his unmatched strategic genius on the chessboard. And it's not just historical figures. We see this paradox in our everyday lives too. The valedictorian who chooses a disastrous romantic partner, the CEO who makes a business blunder that a rookie could avoid, the Nobel laureate who falls for an obvious scam. Why does this happen? Why do those who we consider smart make decisions that seem, well, not so smart? Is there a kind of paradoxical relationship between intelligence and decision-making? Here's an interesting theory. Intelligence doesn't necessarily equate to rational thinking. It's a common misconception that being smart means you're always rational. But being smart just means you have a good ability to learn, understand, and apply knowledge. It doesn't necessarily mean you're good at making decisions, especially when emotions come into play. Furthermore, smart people might be more susceptible to cognitive biases. They're better at coming up with explanations for their actions, even when they're not in their best interest. They can convince themselves of almost anything, and that's where the danger lies. So what's the bottom line here? Intelligence is not an antidote to irrationality. It's not a shield against making mistakes. It's a tool. And like any tool, it can be used wisely, or it can be misused. So what makes these smart individuals make such decisions? Let's delve deeper into the human brain. You see, our brain is a complex organ with different parts serving different functions. Now let's dive into the science behind it all. To understand this better, imagine your brain as two distinct systems: the intuitive System 1 and the rational System 2. System 1, the intuitive part of our brain, is quick. It leaps to conclusions based on past experiences and immediate perceptions. It's like a hare, zipping along, making snap judgments, and relying heavily on instincts and emotions. It's the part of the brain that makes you pull your hand away when you touch something hot, without you even having to think about it. On the flip side, we have System 2, the rational part of our brain. It's more like a tortoise, slow and steady, carefully considering each step. This part of the brain is responsible for critical thinking, logical reasoning, and complex problem solving. It's the part that helps you solve a calculus problem or strategize for a chess game. Now here's the kicker. Even the most intelligent among us can fall prey to cognitive biases when System 1 overpowers System 2. For instance, you might be a math whiz who can solve complex equations in your sleep, but when you're stressed, you might make a simple calculation error. That's System 1 kicking in, taking the quick and easy route instead of allowing System 2 to take its time and think things through. It's important to note that both systems are essential for our survival and daily functioning. System 1 allows us to make quick decisions in potentially dangerous situations, while System 2 helps us navigate complex tasks that require deep thought. So, the next time you see a smart person doing something you perceive as stupid, remember, it's not necessarily a reflection of their intelligence. It might just be an instance where their System 1 took over when System 2 should have been in charge. So it's not always about intelligence, but about which part of our brain we're using to make decisions. Scene script. Still not convinced? Let's take a look at some real-life examples. Perhaps you've heard of Howard Hughes? An aviator, filmmaker, and billionaire, Hughes was undoubtedly a smart man. Yet his decision to invest millions into the creation of the Spruce Goose, an enormous aircraft that barely flew, was widely criticized. Hughes's optimism bias, and overestimation of favorable outcomes, led him to overlook the practical challenges involved in his project, ultimately resulting in a costly and largely unsuccessful venture. Now consider Sir Isaac Newton, an intellectual giant who revolutionized our understanding of the physical world. Yet even Newton was not immune to poor decision-making. In the early 18th century, he invested heavily in the South Sea Company, a venture that turned out to be one of the most notorious financial bubbles in history. Despite his intelligence, Newton fell prey to the bandwagon effect, following the crowd into a disastrous investment. He lost the equivalent of millions in today's money, famously quipping, "I can calculate the motion of heavenly bodies, but not the madness of people." Let's switch gears and move to the world of politics. Richard Nixon, the 37th President of the United States, was undoubtedly intelligent. He opened diplomatic relations with China and ended U.S. involvement in the Vietnam War. Nevertheless, his decision to cover up the Watergate scandal, which led to his resignation, was a classic example of the sunk cost fallacy. Rather than accepting the consequences of the initial wrongdoing, Nixon chose to invest more resources into a cover-up, leading to the end of his presidency. Moreover, cognitive biases are not just limited to individuals, but can also influence entire organizations. Take the case of Nokia, once the world's leading mobile phone manufacturer. Despite their technical prowess and market dominance, Nokia underestimated the rise of smartphones, a clear example of the status quo bias. This bias led Nokia to stick with their traditional mobile phone designs, ultimately leading to their downfall in the face of emerging competitors like Apple and Samsung. Then there's Kodak, a company that dominated the photographic film market for most of the 20th century. Ironically, it was a Kodak engineer who invented the first digital camera, yet the company failed to capitalize on this invention due to the same status quo bias that affected Nokia. They clung to their successful film business, and in doing so, missed the digital revolution, leading to their bankruptcy. These examples serve as a reminder that intelligence doesn't necessarily equate to flawless decision-making. From aviation and investment to politics and business, smart people and organizations have made poor decisions due to cognitive biases. As we see, no amount of intelligence can safeguard us from the pitfalls of cognitive biases. But it's not just about cognitive biases, our emotions play a big part too. You see, our emotions are powerful forces that can often cloud our judgment, leading us to make decisions that may seem irrational or even downright stupid in retrospect. This is because emotions like joy, anger, fear, or sadness can provide a sort of lens through which we see the world, a lens that can distort our perception of reality and lead us down paths we might not otherwise have taken. And let's not forget about the heat of the moment where a rush of emotions can override our rational thinking. Now you might be thinking surely smart people with their vast knowledge and sharp minds would be immune to such emotional pitfalls, right? Well, not quite. You see, intelligence as traditionally defined does not necessarily equate to emotional intelligence. Emotional intelligence, the ability to understand, manage, and respond to emotions, both in ourselves and in others, is a separate skill altogether, and it's a skill that even the most intellectually gifted individuals can lack. This means that even people with high IQs can fall prey to their emotions, making impulsive decisions or reacting in ways that may seem out of character, simply because they're not equipped to handle the emotional storm within them. So, even the smartest people can be led astray by their emotions. So, we've seen that intelligence and rational decision-making don't always go hand in hand. Let's circle back and quickly recap what we've learned today. Our brain operates on two primary systems, the intuitive and the analytical. The intuitive system is fast, automatic, and often influenced by emotions. On the other hand, the analytical system is slower, more deliberate, and logical. However, even the analytical system can be led astray due to cognitive biases. Cognitive biases, these little mental shortcuts, can often lead us to make irrational decisions. They're not inherently bad, they've evolved to help us make quick decisions when needed. But in today's complex world, these biases can sometimes lead us astray, causing us to make decisions that seem stupid in retrospect. And then, there's the role of emotions. Emotions can cloud our judgment, making us act impulsively or irrationally, regardless of our intelligence level. It's not about suppressing emotions, but about understanding and managing them effectively. Remember, it's human to make mistakes, irrespective of intelligence. We're all prone to lapses in judgment from time to time. It's not about how smart you are, but how well you understand and manage your thinking process. The key is to be aware of these potential pitfalls and to keep learning and improving. After all, even the smartest among us are prone to lapses in judgment. It's not about how smart you are, but how well you understand and manage your thinking process.